should be a microphone at that podium. So let me read the legal notice. That's always a good way to start. The Eastern Planning and Zoning Commission will hold a public hearing at its meeting on Monday, May 20th, 2019. That's tonight at 6 p.m. I know it's after 6 p.m., so we're safe. In the cafetorium of the Helen Keller Middle School, 360 Sport Hill Road, Easton, Connecticut, to consider adoption of proposed Easton zoning regulations dated April 11, 2019, and proposed Town of Easton zoning map prepared for the town by Metrocop. Copies of the proposed zoning regulations and zoning map are on the Town of Easton website at eastonconnecticut.gov. A copy of the proposed regulations and map are on file in the office of the Easton Town Clerk. I also happen to have a copy. Dated this 11th day of April 2019 by Robert McQuad, me, Chairman of Planning and Zoning Commission. So why are we here tonight? We're here to get public comment on Easton draft zoning regs. And it's been a few years that we've been working on this. Coincident with that effort, if you recall those who came to the Plan of Conservation and Development hearings, we adopted this at the end of 2018. So we complied with our Connecticut statutory obligation, which is what we need to do every 10 years, is update this Plan of Conservation and Development. So we did that. I like to refer to this as the blueprint. The zoning regs is the delivery system. So I think this commission recognized that our old regulations had kind of evolved over time. We had some amendments periodically that kind of got bolted on to some other regulations, and they were kind of hard to find. They weren't well defined. So we took it upon ourselves to hire an excellent consultant in Glenn Chalder, who also happened to help us with this. And Glenn has helped us get to this point where we are tonight. We've had a lot of meetings. I think it's safe to say we've had many, let's say several hundred hours of effort that have gone into this process. I think what we try to do is, capture what's good about Easton. We want to preserve that, but we also recognize that, things evolve around us, and as we look forward, we want to take those things in consideration and try and plan for the town of Easton the best way we could. The Planning and Zoning Commission, that's what we are. The planning function is really what we've been doing as we work and adopt a POCD, and as we work and get to a point where we'll ultimately adopt town zoning regulations. Glenn Childers here. For those of you who came to our POCD efforts, you know Glenn. You'll see him. I recognize him. Pete Gelderman, counsel for Bertram and Moses, has been our counsel, and Pete has reviewed the regs. We've had several discussions with him along the way, and with Pete's guidance and with Glenn's guidance and with the strength of the commission, we're here tonight. What we hope to do is get public comment from you folks. Is there a signature?
There's a sign-up sheet over
walking
here.
Around.
If anybody wants to speak.
Add your name.
Here, add your name.
I'll get the list, and we'll make sure whoever wants to be heard tonight gets heard. So with that, I know we've got a PowerPoint presentation that Glenn has put together that kind of gives an overview of the regulations and the process. And again, Pete's here from a legal standpoint. I don't think Pete's going to stay the whole night, but it's great to have them by our side to give us continued guidance. Glenn?
I'd like to speak from over here. Can everybody hear me? If I go to the microphone, I'll turn my back to you, and I prefer just to look out at everybody. Is that all right?
Yeah.
If for whatever reason you can't hear me, just go like this or something to say, make your voice louder. As Rob indicated, my name is Glenn Chalder. I'm a planning and zoning consultant, and my work basically is to help communities do two things: prepare plans of conservation and development, and also prepare updates to zoning regulations. We're here tonight to talk about possible adoption of the Easton zoning regulations and the Easton zoning map itself. So I put together a PowerPoint to just give an overview of the various elements of the regulations. Each of you may be here because there's one issue you're interested in or concerned about, but I also want you to see and understand the bigger picture the Commission was working on. So zoning regulations and zoning maps are the tools that communities use to guide land uses and development activities in the community. It's the rule book that we all agree to play by. Some time ago, the Commission recognized, as Rob indicated, that regulations had gotten a little bit out of control. We had amendments to amendments to amendments in PDF format. Nobody knew where the original Word version was, trying to figure out if you could do something. I wouldn't say it was impossible, but it probably required extended effort. So the question is, how can we review and update the regulations to address the issues the community is facing today, reorganize them so that hopefully each of you can easily find what you might want to know about what you could do on your property or other people could do on their property, and also clarify the regulations to make it plain English and text and so on. So tonight is a public hearing on really two issues. One is the text themselves, the zoning regulations, and the other is the zoning map. So I'll be talking about both of them, but I just wanted the Commission to realize there are two applications tonight.
Okay.
So first part is the regulations themselves. The regulations are organized into four main components. This is essentially the way that people like to use or need to use regulations to find what they need to know. And those four sections are some of the regulatory basics up front. I'll explain that in a moment. Zones and uses, what can you or can't you do with property? The standards that apply for parking, signage, landscaping, etc. And then the procedures that involve. Now, in the first section on basics, the section deals with the statutory authority to adopt these regulations, the purposes we're adopting them for, describes the different zoning districts, enforcement tools, etc. And one of the important things, I think, in the regulations is an important concept of zoning, which says if the regulations don't expressly say that something is permitted, the presumption is it's prohibited. And so, again, if there's things which are said or unstated in the regulation, they're presumed to be prohibited. The next major section of the regulation is the definition of words and terms. And of course, this is important in any type of document like this, is we need to know what the words mean. And what we tried to do here is add graphics to the regulations that actually explain the use of a zoning term. What is a yard? What is a setback? How do we measure building height? We've also grouped like terms together. These blue boxes are a way to get terms which are related to each other, next to each other, so you can read them at the same time. And the classic case, I think, in zoning is our use of the word principal and accessory. Principal means it's the major activity on a property, such as a house. An accessory is a bird bath, a lawn gnome, or other types of activities. But accessory is under A and principal is under P. And if you didn't put them together, people wouldn't sort of understand that concept of zoning. So our goal in doing this was to try to make it user-friendly overall. The numbering in the regulations goes 3,000, in thousands. So the first section, the basic setup was 1,000, and words and terms was 2,000. Section 3,000 is residence districts. As you know, there's two basic residential zones in Easton. The residential A, which is the 1 acre zone in the southeast corner of the community, and the residential B is the remainder of the community. The regulations are set up with various sections. There are use tables to describe what is permitted, what standards apply, and how you get permission for this activity. So by going through these pages for the different principal uses, you can identify what it is you can do on a piece of property. We follow that up with the same thing related to accessory uses and structures, and again, what's permitted, what standards might apply, and how to get permission. So the regulations are clearly laid out in group that hopefully make it easier for people to understand what you can or cannot do with property. In addition, the area and dimensional requirements are grouped together. How far a building needs to be from the property line, how big a lot needs to be, building height, etc. Are in this section. So the basic parameters are grouped together for what people would need to know. Section 4,000 in the regulations deals with other districts. There's two types of other districts. First is the Eastern Center District, and the next one is the Floodplain Overlay District. The Eastern Center District is here at the intersection of Sport Hill and at the fire station in the town green. I'm drawing a blank for a second. The intersecting street is Center. Thank you. Center Street, right? Eastern Center. Well, there you go. So that section is a brand new section. It's essentially the area around, here's the Fireman's Green, the fire station, here's Silverman's, the general store. Eastern Center District allows for some small business uses through special permit, farm and garden centers, coffee, deli, ice cream restaurant, etc. There are two things which I think are important for the community to understand. The first is, this is a special type of zoning district enabled under Connecticut law called a village district. Village district gives the commission strict architectural controls over what is proposed to make sure that anything that is proposed looks and feels like Easton. So we have greater control in this district than we do over any other district in town. In addition, the commission has established text which says no use variance of any kind can be permitted in the Eastern Center District. So this gives the commission complete control, if you will, about what happens there through a special permit process. The other section in zones and uses is the floodplain overlay zone, and that's required for compliance with the National Flood Insurance Program. The section on zones and uses contains section 5,000, and these are standards for specific activities such as a home-based business, accessory apartments, lodging facilities, interior lots, agriculture-related activities, and other things. And these are sections, again, which contain more detail on particular types of uses or activities. One of these is what's called a conservation development. The regulations are establishing a situation where should land be subdivided in Easton in the future, the commission is intending to allow some type of flexibility on a parcel to preserve the maximum amount of open space, scenic views, sensitive natural resources, etc. I think we all agree that we'd like for parcels in Easton which are large and oversized to remain that way in the future. But parcels do sometimes get subdivided. So the question for the regulations is what might happen. In some communities, parcels of land can get subdivided with no open space set aside. So all of the land is cut up into lots. Some communities have an open space requirement which might allow for a small parcel of open space within the parcel. What Easton is hoping to do is an environmentally based planning process that would allow for consolidated open space that could create and enhance our open space network in the community overall. The next section of the regulation standards relates to things like signs, parking and loading, exterior lighting, landscaping, stormwater management, soil erosion and sediment control, and fences and walls. So these are the standards related to those activities which go along with the uses which are permitted in the various zoning districts. Section 7,000 of the regulations is special types of conditions or situations. Under zoning law, there's something called non-conforming conditions. And this is where a parcel of land or a use predates the adoption of regulations and enjoys some protection from zoning and changes in zoning. So a non-conforming lot, a non-conforming use, a non-conforming building, etc. is subject to special provisions, and those are provided in this section. The section also on telecommunications facilities. The state mostly has jurisdiction over telecommunication facilities. But there are some situations where the town has control, and these are the regulations for that. And section 7300 is earthwork operations to provide protection for what happens when earthwork operations are ongoing. Now the last major section of the regulation is procedures. So at this point in time in the regulations, you figured out what it is you can do, or if you can do it, what standards apply, and this section now outlines what you would need to do to get the appropriate approval. Some activities are identified as having no permit required. You can just go ahead and do those. Some require a zoning permit from staff. Some require a site plan application or a special permit application, a text amendment or a zone change, or going to the zoning board of appeals. And again, exactly how that would be processed is identified in these regulations. So again, that's the four major parts of the regulations. We have the regulatory basics up front, the zones and uses, the standards and the procedures, and that's the new and improved version of the Easton zoning regulations. Now the other application that's up tonight is the zoning map. I'd just like to talk about that briefly. There's two major activities going along with the zoning map. The first of which is the zoning map in use today is a hand-drawn map. And it's not that those hand-drawn maps have gone the way of monks in the Middle Ages, but generally speaking nowadays mapping is done digitally on computers. And so with the assistance of MetroCog, which is our regional planning agency, and their GIS capabilities, the zoning map is being updated to a digital map, which hopefully will make it easier for us to maintain that in the future. In addition, the only zoning change is the addition of the Eastern Center District, which is here. So those are the two applications which are here before the Commission tonight. The Commission believes that these applications are major improvements both to the map and to the regulations. We look forward to comments from the community.
Thank you, Glenn. So who's got the pad with the list of names on it?
Does anybody else want to speak that wants to sign?
You can add your name if you like. Thank you, Margaret. Okay, so we're just going to work through the names. Dory Wolin and 8 Cedar Hill Lane is who I have first. Hello, Dory. Feel free to speak up.
I will. Okay.
Yes.
My name is Dory Bowen. I'm here in front of you as a private citizen, but also chair of the Conservation Commission. So some of my comments go back and forth. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak tonight regarding the proposed revisions to the zoning regulations. Also, thank you for taking the time to complete this project, which undoubtedly took a long time on your part. You each deserve a raise. However, having read the entire 136 pages, I am alarmed that what you are trying to achieve. That is, it seems to me that once these regs become official, our town will face major changes. It's bad enough that the village center got created. Now, according to these regs, that area pursuant to section 4140 calls for no minimum requirement for lot sizes, buildable areas, sightlines, etc. Whether this is part of the village district or not, this area should have the same restrictions as the rest of the town. On a different note, while you refer to erosion controls, and by the way, there's a separate section about that, and related activities at several places, you fail to mention that those requirements are imposed by the Inland Wetland Commission and its regulations. Yes, you do refer to the wetland regulations. However, if one is unaware of the magnitude and severity of such regs, your references get lost in the shuffle. Next, these regulations contemplate a heavy-duty enforcement and work by your staff, which I seriously question how your commission is planning to go about. The town is overtaxed as is, and increasing your staff will be anything but easy or simple. You mentioned violations, penalties, and a lot of oversight. Are all these new? Personally, I have not seen any violations issued by P&Z, and I'm sure there are a few, or should be. How are they handled today? Regarding flat and/or interior lots, I understand that you are bound by state statutes. However, one way or the other, the approval of such lot should require inland wetland approval. Without it, the homeowner might be blindsided and penalized for an eventual inland wetland denial, or worse, lengthy legal battle. Regarding agriculture, you indicate that agriculture and related uses do not require a zoning permit. That's great. However, any such use might need as-of-right determination by the Inland Wetland Commission. Regarding private recreation facility, what is the definition of this? Or better, what falls under here? Tennis or golf clubs? Or, subject to special permits, a restaurant, cafe is limited to not more than 75 seats. Personally, I believe that's too big. We are not in Fairfield or Westbrook. Regarding the floodplain areas, while there is a map in association with these regs, it would be helpful to list the areas subject to the year or the 50-year floods. Further, paragraph 9, section 4260, why can't you just say no? That's a lengthy paragraph, and I didn't want to copy in here. Section 5330, paragraph 1. If permitted, the facility undoubtedly would want a liquor license. This is talking about cafes and a spa. There is no mention in these regulations about Easton being a dry or a wet town, although there is mention about it in section 5630, paragraph 4. What is conservation development? Section 5900. You know, tonight I saw it, what it means. I kind of thought they were, but it really should be defined in your regs. Section 72100. Who monitors and how do you determine that a tower was abandoned? This relates to cell towers. Approval process. For special permit applications, part of the process is holding a public hearing. To make it more transparent, this should be noted in each section where a special permit is being discussed. In other words, on every section you're saying zoning required, no, not required, special permit required. You can easily put there next to it, public hearing is required. Section 8800, procedural requirements. Paragraph 1 refers to both P&Z and ZBA. The first meets twice a month, while the second only once. Paragraph 7 should reflect that. Section 8893. Paragraph 2 contemplates a village district consultant, another paid person, at whose expense. Thank you.
Thank you, Dory. What I can tell you is that everything that is submitted tonight will be read by this commission. And Dory, thank you for taking the time to articulate your thoughts. If somebody does have a long letter, they can submit it and paraphrase it. I'm not suggesting you could have paraphrased it any better. I think you did a good job. But that's always probably preferred. Thank you for your comments, Dory. Grant Montserrat.
Montserrat, North Park Avenue. The first public hearing, approximately 90% of the people who showed up expressed their opposition to the village district concept. Yet here we are. Now we're in the zoning phase. In the first public hearing, I asked the chairman, when are you going to recuse yourself from this process? And you told us, you know when you'll have to recuse yourself. So I'm suggesting that you need to recuse yourself right now. Do you agree?
Grant, you can proceed. You can share your...
I'm asking you a question.
This is a planning function represented by...
This is a zoning
This
function right
commission.
now. You're asking us to approve
Planning
your zoning plan. So to that end, this zoning plan impacts the property on Sport Hill Road, which your family has interest.
This impacts every landowner.
It impacts the chairman of the Planning and Zoning Commission's property,
Thank you.
which you have interest. There are no size requirements on section 5330 other than height. So let's say you want to build a conference center on your property. How big can that be? And how will that impact traffic on Sport Hill Road? We have enough traffic jams problems already with Silverman's Farm. We'll have it from a village district. And yet here you are boldly saying, oh, well, this is not a problem for me just because I have a family interest in that property. I'm suggesting that you need to recuse yourself. You're directly affected by this.
So is everybody else.
That has no bearing on
This
it. He said chairman of planning and zoning. Everybody is the chairman of planning and zoning.
Brandon, you can
There's
share.
plenty of information, nothing will be decided tonight.
Direct
Mr. McLaughlin
financial conflict of
is
interest.
more than capable to preside over this meeting.
No, he just
No, I-
Brandon, please address this commission, and you're welcome to share your comment. And if you want to continue, you're welcome to continue.
Okay, so I think that's pretty clear what I'm driving at here. I find it kind of condescending that you won't even address it.
Thank you. Is there anything else
You're
you'd like to
welcome.
share?
And one other further thing, from the first planning and zoning decisions that you made regarding Saddle Ridge, we now
Stick
have
to
to
the-
kick in
stick
money
to
to pay to get
topic.
a lawyer to overturn our town
Brandon,
attorney's.
please stick to the subject at hand.
It's all involved in the same subject. You're the same planning and zoning commission.
That is
You're the
not the
same
subject.
chairman
We're
of
for
the
the
planning and zoning
regulations, thank
commission.
you.
That is not
Oh,
tonight's.
please, you're not the sergeant at
Brandon,
arms,
is there
are you?
anything else you'd like to ask?
No, I just want to add that you are really, you need to be, again, recuse
Thank you
yourself
for
from
your
this.
opinion.
Yeah, it's not an opinion, it'll be a legal opinion.
Joan Winter?
Thank you to all of you for volunteering all your time to work on this project. I have stood before this commission twice before.
Can't really hear you.
I have stood before this commission twice before expressing my concern for the Easton Village District, specifically speaking to the issues of congestion, traffic patterns, lights, noise, and asphalt. I continue to voice my opposition to the plan as it currently stands. But what is equally concerning, if not more so, is proposed 5300 Country Inn Spa Wellness Facility, which may include restaurant, conference, and recreational facilities. This is particularly concerning because it introduces commercialization into residential areas, specifically catering to the comfort, convenience, or necessity of the guest who doesn't even reside in Easton. This proposal does not respect the rural character of residential zone neighborhoods. What a shock for Easton residents who will purchase homes with the understanding and confidence that their home is within a protected residential area, only to learn that a conference center, day spa, or sports facility has equal footing in the residential neighborhood. Regarding the recreational facilities, this could include such organizations as the Clubhouse Baseball Training Institution, which would not only bring in additional outside traffic into already congested areas, but it would also add nighttime lighting, batting cages, tunnels, and commercial structures, adding more insult to residentially zoned areas. One large parcel of land which could accommodate this proposal is the property along Sport Hill Road in direct proximity to the proposed Eastern Village District. Traffic and congestion will pose a significant issue, making it challenging for local residents, not to mention adding a large concentration of commercialization in direct proximity to residential areas. In addition, if tolls are placed on the Merritt Parkway, Sport Hill Road and South Park Avenue, which feed into Sport Hill Road, will become major thoroughfares for individuals trying to avoid the tolls, further adding to the traffic and congestions. This proposal is a fundamental change to the character of our town of Easton. Something of this magnitude should be put to a town machine vote. Thank you.
I'd like to thank this commission for all its hard work.
Break?
Is that better?
Yeah, thank you.
It keeps falling. Okay. I'd like to thank the commission for taking the time to put this enormous document together. However, what would have been helpful for the public is to delineate what is already passed and what is being proposed, because it's very confusing in the 136 pages. We have no idea. I mean, you codified everything, but we have no idea what's new and what's already in place. So it would have been enormously helpful to understand what the new regs that you're proposing. And I have some questions, so I was just wondering if I can get those answered. According to section 8-12A